won't you kindly open your geography? Let us turn to page 123. Between the Caribbean and the Pacific shore, you'll find a city of amor. Managua, Nicaragua is a beautiful town. You buy an hacienda for a few pesos down.
Central America until recently has been in shadow, largely ignored by scholars and journalists, so that the epic struggles of its peoples and the names of their heroes were lost behind a facade of ridicule, the so-called banana republics. In 1823, President Monroe proclaimed what was modestly called the Monroe Doctrine. Its aim was to protect Latin America from the Europeans, regardless of whether the people of Latin America wanted to be protected. This paternalism later became known as America's manifest destiny, that is, America's God-given right to control its own hemisphere. Early in the 20th century, manifest destiny took on a new meaning. It was now a crusade against Bolshevism, an imagined red threat in America's backyard. In 1912, US Marines landed in Nicaragua to protect democracy, as they put it, and to hold elections. But people in Nicaragua didn't want a foreign army to organize their elections, and resistance began behind a leader who said, "The issue is that the United States has no right to invade and humiliate a small country." His name was Augusto Sandino. He was a liberal and a nationalist, not a Marxist, and the Americans made the mistake of dismissing him as a bandit. Central America, said US Undersecretary of State Richard Olds, has always understood that governments which we recognize and support stay in power, while those we do not recognize and support fail. Major General Smedley Butler of the United States Marines later described his role with disarming frankness. "I was a racketeer for capitalism," he said. "I helped purify Nicaragua for international banking. I brought light to the Dominican Republic for American sugar interests. And I helped make Honduras right for American fruit companies." Sandino and what was called his mad little army rejected all that. On July the 16th, 1927, he attacked the US Marines headquarters here at Ocotal in the north of Nicaragua. And that afternoon, across these hills, came a formation of de Havilland biplanes bearing United States markings. The planes formed into a column and dived at the center of town. With machine guns blazing, they dropped their bombs at 300 feet, and that is now believed to be the first use of organized dive bombing in history, long before the German Luftwaffe was credited with the innovation at Guernica in Spain. There were hundreds of casualties, and Sandino learned a lesson. From then on, he became a master of guerrilla warfare, of attacking and melting away, tactics which were to be adopted around the world and to change much of the world over the next 50 years. By 1933, Sandino's mad little army had defeated the Marines, driving them from Nicaragua, a lesson of history apparently overlooked today. Sandino went to Managua for peace talks, where he was betrayed by America's man, Somoza, the head of the National Guard. In 1934, he was murdered. There was a calypso sung in American nightclubs in the 1940s that began like this. A guy asked the dictator if he had any farms. The dictator said he had only one. It was Nicaragua. Anastasio Somoza founded a dynasty that ran Nicaragua like a family business for 44 years. The Somozas owned almost half of all the arable land in Nicaragua. They controlled the coffee, sugar, and beef industries. Nothing was overlooked. They owned the national airline outright. If you bought a Mercedes car, you bought it from a Somoza company. Even the paving stones in the streets were made by a Somoza cement factory, which got the contract from a Somoza ministry, and of course the profits went to El Presidente. The Somozas were protected by a private army called the National Guard, which the United States created, paid, and armed. Somoza called them his boys, and they tortured almost as a sport. This is the Messiah volcano, which, as you can see, is very much alive. One of the delights of Somoza's boys was to drop his opponents from helicopters into the volcano. The official American attitude to samosa was best summed up by President Roosevelt. That guy, he said, may be a son of a bitch, but he's our son of a bitch.